Well, our next guest blends two very important things in life quite well: law and food. Things that you need to lead a good life, actually. We're joined, as you can see, by senior advocate of Nigeria, who's also a farmer, Mr. Yahaya Dangana. He's live in our Abuja studio. Good morning, senior advocate, and welcome to the Morning Brief. Today, we want to talk about right to food. I know we can talk about right to, freedom of speech, gathering, association, and all of that. But the right to food is not something we really talk about. So maybe to refresh the minds of people, or at least those who don't know about it, to let them know that there's actually a right to food. What is this about, senior advocate, and how, would I say, justiciable is this?
Good morning, viewers. I'm delighted to be here. Right to food, right to food, right to food everywhere. It has been a struggle that has been on for a while by civil societies, other NGOs like Oxfam, GSEF, and others, until it crystallizes into having the Right to Food Act passed as a law, as a legislation in Nigeria in 2023. In fact, it's one of the last legislation passed by the National Assembly that was signed by President Buhari at the point of his exit. And it is a law or a piece of legislation that is aiming towards ensuring that there is adequacy of food, the channels of distribution, the availability, and others. And not to ensure that, like you have the right to life, the right to food is also that which is capable of putting food on the table of every Nigerian, free of charge. No, it's not such. There is no free lunch anywhere, even in Freetown. And we most often see the disaster that is associated with where food are being distributed freely as part of campaign electioneering, that these are very costly and the cost is futuristic. After the election, you dearly pay for the cost of what you were given. The contract for which the next set of disbursement will be doing will also be skyrocketed. And the effect of this is what the citizen will be faced with. But in essence, it is a right that has come into place. By that, it is a small amendment to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Section 16. And this Section 16 comes under Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which deals with fundamental objective and directive of the state principle.
So, senior
in
advocate,
other words,
I want to know, in addition to what you're saying, I want to just also know how justiciable is it? So can I approach the court and say my right to food has been trampled upon?
That is the point I was going to make, that having been enshrined under Chapter 2 of the Constitution, it's a non-justiciable chapter of the Constitution. The right advocates and civil organizations who have worked tirelessly for years in ensuring that Food Right Act is passed. A breakdown of the journey was made in one of our last outing here in Abuja, engagement on the Food Right Act. It was a negotiation that instead of having nothing, insisting that it should come under Chapter 4 of the Constitution, may not likely see the light of the day as at that time. So better still, let it be under Chapter 2, and in due course, with agitation and judicial activism, it may lead to transmuting it from where it is now to Chapter 4 of the Constitution, where it becomes very justiciable. Talking about justiciability of it, much as it is not justiciable in Nigeria, I've seen where legal and judicial activism have made court to make pronouncements to the effect that this provision is enshrined or is being interpreted to mean right to life. For instance, in the state of India, the said provision comes under Chapter 2 of their own constitution, which also is non-justiciable. But the Supreme Court of India, in some number of cases, the case of Shantiza and one other, interpreted it in the light of the fact that once anybody has the right to life should not be considered in isolation. It should be considered alongside all other components that will make living a meaningful one. Therefore, healthcare, right to food, and others are components of the right to life. And in that case, they made those provisions, though under Chapter 2 of their own constitution, justiciable. Then if we move away from there, our neighbors here within African continent, South Africa, Chapter 26 and 32 of their constitution made provision with respect to issue of the right to life, particularly when it comes to children and malnutrition, among others, and also right to life and food of people who have been held in captivity or imprisonment. So quality food, adequate nutrition, and others are part of the constitutional provision in South Africa. And if truly we are working towards having a meaningful right to food in Nigeria, these two examples are where we could also look towards having same enshrined in our constitution. One, by moving it from Chapter 2 now to Chapter 4 of the constitution. And also, even as it is, judicial activism and legal activism by the rights activists and NGOs and others could make the court to borrow leave by doctrine of, though not binding decision, but at least persuasive authority from other jurisdiction to interpret this right to food,
essentially, senior advocate,
in the light of Chapter 4 of the Constitution.
Yeah, so essentially it's not justiciable under the circumstances. So take a look at or listen to this from the Right to Food Act. Strategies that guarantee food security of the nation regarding availability, accessibility, and affordability of food to the citizens are initiated and undertaken. That's according to Section 16A, subsection 1 of the Right to Food Act. But under the circumstances, we have 25 million Nigerians that are food insecure. So doesn't it mean that this Right to Food Act is just taking space in the Constitution and it's not applicable where we have 25 million Nigerians who are food insecure? And would it require a domestication in the 36 states of the Federation for it to be justiciable?
Talking about the non-justiciability of it and the acute food insecurity that we are faced with. Just day before yesterday, I read an article that about 11 million children in the Northeast alone are faced with serious starvation and hunger as it is. And these are people that ordinarily should have the very essence of. Now, to the justiciability, much as this provision is under Chapter 2 of the Constitution, I will want a situation whereby serious activism will help the government by this very fundamental objective and directive of the state principle, so that the court will interpret it not just issue of life, but there are components of life. Food is one, health is one, not just food, qualitative and nutritious food. Now the essence of this legislation is that the government shall ensure that adequate facilities, adequate materials and others to ensure availability and distribution of food as it is. Is it not, or are we not seeing it as failure on the part of the government already? At a point in time, the national silos that serve as the grain reserve for the nation were concession out to commercial individuals. These are platforms or facilities with which the government will buy food and store them to redistribute in the event that there is food shortage to individuals at various points in time. Growing up as a child in the village, there is what is popularly referred to as shinkafan gomneti. Then, from time to time, the government would bring in polished rice and would sell it at subsidized rate to family level, per mudu, per bags, and what have you. Now, that is not in place. The only thing we see with respect to food distribution is when it comes to political or party campaign. People do that. And with respect to issue of subsidy, well, the subsidy in this respect, like I said earlier, are things that are given free of charge. But the cost implication that comes with it is enough to put facilities in place for people that can farm. Talking of people that can farm, for instance, farmers in Nigeria under this Right to Food Act can come together and sue the government of Nigeria today, for instance. Why? Because the government has failed in providing security that will guarantee the life of average farmers on the field working. For instance, take the Lake Chad Basin. Before now, they were producing this Irish potato in quantity, in tons. But now, because of insecurity, nobody dares go there to farm again, and so other vegetable and things like that. Secondly, the issue of farmer-headers clash is one of the fundamental objectives of the state directive of the state principle in providing security of individuals within the state of Nigeria.
Senior Advocate, you're saying
now,
that law
the farmer-headers
is
clash
more than just a
that
document. It's something that should be acted upon. It's not decoration. And because of time, and just so we can also internalize some of the points you have made, which is that these laws can actually be triggered. And you made a point about farmers. Perhaps they're listening right now, and they could take a cue from that, because the role of government, the responsibility of government is security and welfare. So if it's failing in one sense, the people have a right to call that to question. But we have to thank you so much for giving us that deep dive into the all-important act, Right to Food. So in case you didn't know, there's an act called Right to Food. Well, now you know, thanks to Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Yahaya, Dangana, who is also a farmer. I'm tempted to ask if you will be taking action against government, well, with other farmers. Yes or no? Is that something you're considering?
Well, the situation will tell. But the most important thing is for people to work hard to get provided with food and not to wait for government to give them free food. That right to act does not guarantee free food to anybody in Nigeria.
Well, Senior Advocate, that's neither a yes or no. But we have to thank you so much for your time on the program. Again, we'll be speaking with Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Yahaya Dangana. Thank you once again.
Thank you. You're welcome.
We'll take a quick break now. When we return, we take to the skies, literally. You don't want to miss this. Stay with us.